Hello everybody, and it's great to be here with Arrow and talking to the partner community today. My name's Mark Murrin and I'm the NetApp Alliance Manager here at Veeam in the UK. We're going to have a great session. We're going to cover off a number of different things for you, hopefully delivering some value to you all by the end of the session. So we're going to look at the market and the challenges that our customers face and the outcomes that we deliver between Veeam, NetApp and Arrow. And then we're going to cover a little bit more around the technologies, the capabilities and what they are, and then focus on the use cases. And I'm joined today by Kevin Ridings.
Hi guys, Kevin Ridings, Alliance Systems Engineer for Veeam, and supporting Arrow and NetApp to really drive the best use of those two technologies and brought together by Arrow to really drive those values. And I'm going to be taking the part of this session to go into some of the sales plays to look at those, how we would place those products with customers.
Okay, thank you. So just to kick off, I'm just going to cover for those partners in the room that aren't familiar with Veeam too much. So Veeam is a business that is now about 10, 11 years old. And over the course of that time, we've been very successful in growing the number of customers that use the systems and solutions that we offer. And in particular, we just want to draw your attention to the Net Promoter Score, which is really an indication from a customer perspective of how happy they are with Veeam and the fact that they would recommend the use of the solution. So it's something that we're really proud of. And I think the other piece to comment here is that earlier in the year, Veeam was acquired for a multi-billion-dollar sum. And the point is that that's such good news for Veeam and for yourselves in terms of what we can talk to customers about as we drive forward into the next phase and think about where these technologies and solutions go for our customers in the future. So Veeam and NetApp have had a history for some significant time now, starting in 2014. And really it covers a lot around integrations into the various different technologies that NetApp offers and that Veeam connects with to build out this really robust data protection strategy and picture. But I want to focus here on 2018 onwards, and that's really what gives you as partners a great opportunity to combine the Veeam and the NetApp solution on one bill of materials, on one set of paperwork. That is the point at which NetApp got a global resale agreement. And that means now that the Veeam SKUs are available on NetApp price lists, and you can build those solutions for your customers in one place. From a technology perspective, you can see advancements in 2019 where we made significant changes and great additions to what we can do to support Storage Grid and the various cloud options that reside across that. And in 2020, possibly one of the largest releases for us as Veeam that has the most impact with NetApp and for you as partners is that we now have a great set of capability and enhanced features around NAS Backup, which Kevin's going to go into in a bit more detail later on. So I'm just going to cover a little bit about the market. And we know that data is changing everything. Data is very much the lifeblood of your customer's business. And every conversation that you're having with them is likely to be revolving around data and applications and the infrastructures that are needed to support those services. It's got a number of key influences that you can see on the screen here. Perhaps one of the largest, the biggest influences is cloud. And we're talking really about the proliferation of different cloud types that a customer can really buy into, whether it's private cloud, cloud provided by service providers, or indeed the public cloud, the hyperscalers, AWS and Azure. But what that means is that the data and the applications really can be delivered from any location, and the data can be consumed and stored in any location. It means that there's massive flexibility and that the growth is astronomical in terms of data. It's really very much impacted by mobile and different device form factors. And the idea that there is now edge computing and lots of systems and analysis goes on outside of the core data center, generating in itself massive volumes of data that also need to be analyzed in situ at that point. And of course, everybody's looking to do a lot more with that data. It's absolute gold in terms of understanding and determining new opportunities and markets and growth and future. So these things mean that, data is the lifeblood of that organization. So with that growth and that criticality of data and applications in the organization, there are threats. So we have to be mindful of that growth and what that means for an organization, thinking now about where it is stored, how it's retrieved, how it's secured, and so forth. So there's no longer just a case of backing up the data. There's a lot more complexity involved in that multi-cloud environment where the data can be anywhere across the IT organization, and no single organization will stand to have any downtime within that organization. They cannot afford to have services interrupted or impacted. The consequence of that interruption is astronomical. And you see, some of the numbers down here. That impact is no longer a fiscal impact alone. That's an impact to brand. That's an impact to customer confidence. And depending on what sector it is, for example, in healthcare, it's an impact to life. So they are really critical areas. And of course, you've got to be compliant, and you've got to be absolutely confident in the security of that data, that information that we expect these organizations to protect for us. So that brings with it, additional challenges. That's a complex picture to try and address. Lots and lots of moving parts. And quite often we're finding that, a legacy backup solution just isn't able to deliver against those needs, those up-to-the-minute demands that require massive flexibility, to scale and grow. And invariably, they weren't built for those environments. So all of the new nuances that are coming through that are starting to continue to shape an organization's data strategy just can't be kept up with. And invariably, you see that it is also pretty expensive. So Veeam takes a different approach. Veeam has been built from the ground up based on virtualization and cloud technologies. It's not trying to retrofit and shoehorn into an environment that it was never built for. So you'll see as we go through this how we address some of this compete against legacy. It's absolutely our aim to be the number one choice for cloud data management. When we're working with partners like yourselves to try and meet these customer challenges and drive really strong, productive outcomes for them, we have to major on these three areas. We have to drive simplicity, provide that ultimate flexibility, and give absolute surety and confidence to the customer around reliability. So we're looking really at solutions that are fit for every shape and size of organization, whether you're an enterprise, a mid-market, or indeed an entry-level type business, SMB. It's got to be scalable. It's got to be flexible. So because we are software defined and we are hardware agnostic, it means that we can build and scale with an organization's IT strategy through all the different changes as their strategy flexes from one to the other and brings in different cloud components, but is also fit for the future. So those three tenets are really core to what Veeam does with NetApp, and you'll see those echoed all the way through the rest of today's presentation.
Thank you, Mark. So just to go a little bit further and talk about the different locations of data that your customers may have. The data obviously could be sat in private cloud, it could be sat in public cloud, it could be on, as Mark mentioned, on Internet of Things at the edge. But of course, we need to be able to protect that data, and backup and recovery are the sort of the true features and true value that Veeam can offer together with NetApp, and that's really at the core of what we do. But we also have the ability to drive cloud mobility, to be able to move data between locations. But whilst we're protecting that data and moving that data around, we're able to maintain the same governance and compliance regardless of the location of that data. So the same retention and same SLAs are able to be delivered. Over and above that, we can deliver the same orchestration and automation as well, bringing the movement and the protection of that data into a fully orchestrated and automated model, while still maintaining monitoring and analytics across that infrastructure. So it's more than just data protection. Of course, you want to unlock the power of your data. And we start with data availability, and then that has to be simple, flexible and reliable, and be able to perform very fast recovery on-prem or in the cloud, again, regardless of that location. But delivering true data agility, so leveraging the environment's needs, so without any constraints on data mobility, we can move and be flexible of where we move that data to. And there are some additional services that Veeam and NetApp can bring together, and that really can drive business acceleration. So services such as our data labs from storage snapshots, giving you the ability to spin up ad hoc test, dev, troubleshooting environments, really helps an organization maybe accelerate the delivery of a new application or a new service, because that additional testing can be performed. And we do all this with our single platform. And our single platform has the ability to protect virtual, physical, software as a service, and of course cloud, while still maintaining, as I've mentioned, full monitoring and analytics, orchestration. Backup and replication is at the core of what we do, and that within there we have our data labs, as I mentioned. But some of the power of what we do and our integration into the NetApp data fabric is around our universal storage APIs. So that gives us the ability to tap into the ONTAP or the Element OS devices, so NetApp FAS or NetApp HCI or SolidFire, but also into StorageGrid with our native object storage integration. But just to talk about a little bit more detail about what we can protect, in the cloud we have the ability to protect Microsoft Azure, maybe a Veeam Cloud Connect program, AWS. We can protect regardless of the location, as we mentioned. We do have the ability to protect software as a service. In the virtual world, we have the ability and coverage against VMware and Hyper-V. And for physical, of course, we have Windows, Linux, perhaps not expected, Oracle Solaris, and of course, AIX. So just going a little bit more detail and some of the value around the delivery possible from the single platform. It's really about backup, but true intelligent recovery. And that's from a backup or a snapshot. And that'll become clear later on of why that's particularly valuable. Being able to recover anything, anywhere, at any time. Delivering that true cloud mobility, full portability of data across multi-cloud environments, while still delivering built-in intelligence, so there is complete visibility in the environment, no surprises. And of course, automation across an environment. The ability to be able to scale to very large environments really requires automation, removing the possibility of human error, and automation is really key, as I said, at scale in the enterprise. But maintaining governance and compliance regardless of where the data is, ensuring security, compliance, and of course privacy requirements. As data grows, as those data endpoints can be anywhere, maintaining security and privacy across customer data is very important, and of course protecting that data. We have a very simple rule here at Veeam that we like to follow, and that's initially the 3-2-1 rule. So that's having 3 copies of your data, on 2 different media types, one of them in a different location, and of course 0 errors guaranteed. And we'll go into that and look at how the combination of Veeam and NetApp together can really help that in a couple of minutes. So we all, for some time now, we've had conversations with customers and comparing snapshots and backups and looking at what a snapshot is and what a backup is. And sometimes there would be a contest to say whether a snapshot's better than a backup or whether a backup's better than a snapshot. Well, that's certainly not the case. Snapshots are very good at being instantly created. They're very space efficient, and they are particularly low impact on the production environment. But a true backup is completely separated from an architecture, completely offline to the primary location. And it is a true detached full copy that, again, no dependency on the source. So I believe that there is great value of using the two together. And this table here can really help that conversation with a customer. Looking at what the key points are and the key value of a snapshot and a backup. And blending the use of backup and snapshot together really does deliver that truly cohesive data protection strategy, allowing you to perform recovery from backup or snapshot just as easily from within the one user interface. A restore operator can simply pick a snapshot or a backup without any difference in operation. The underlying technology differences are handled by the orchestration of Veeam from within the UI.
Perfect. Thank you, Kevin. So you've heard a little bit around what it is that Veeam does in terms of our vision, some of the history that we have with NetApp. We're going to explore now in a bit more detail what this means for customers. What's the relevance of what we've described to customers? And we're going to explore that in terms of understanding the customer challenges and the outcomes that we are trying to drive in partnership. So what are we trying to affect and create a positive environment for the customer? So you can see here, there are really three key areas where we're seeing customer pain. So the first one is disjointed data management. And really what we're saying about that is that, as I mentioned at the top of the presentation, customers' data exists in a significant number of different areas and across different sorts of technology, different sorts of ways to store it. And there are different needs and access to that data. So there's a data profile, there's what we do to archive it, it's what applications are running in certain locations. And of course, it creates these silos, and these silos don't always interact. They don't always have knowledge of each other. So what we end up with is gaps in our ability to protect it. And that is a massive issue that causes all sorts of ripple-on effects around availability of services and data just at the point when the business may need it most. The second point here is that, with that growth in data and the value in that data, if you cannot, tap into that potential and really use that data to drive insights within the organization and propel that innovation, again, you can create a situation in the customer where they perhaps stall. That innovation doesn't move at the right pace because they haven't got access to that data. When you have that, you create all sorts of issues around lack of confidence and the ability to grow at the right pace. And of course, the other point here, which was mentioned a little bit earlier, is that it's complex. It's complex to manage this. It's complex to bring this whole set of moving parts together. And when you do, you can have a very segmented view of the organization. It's no longer good enough to just have a view what's happening with backups. You've got to have a view what's happening with backups, what's happening with infrastructure, what's happening with a virtualized environment, what's happening with the cloud environment, and how are they all interacting, because they all have a part to play on the data that you want to access and protect and the applications that is being driven. So if you move to the right hand side here, we're really trying to drive a response to those challenges. We want to be able to protect everywhere. It doesn't matter what the organization has decided to adopt in terms of that blend of public cloud or private cloud, or different technology types. We need a holistic view across that lets them move and really think about their core business and not about backup and data. It should be second nature. We've got to create massive value from that. That's where the competitive advantage comes from for an organization, for our mutual customers, and that's the piece that we really have to try and unleash. But we've got to do it whilst maintaining simplicity. There's no point having all of this, done in a great solution, but it not being simple to administer and manage moving forward, because that's where you're going to get, increasing costs come in. So they're the outcomes that we want to try and drive. So if we look at that in a little bit more detail, we can start to apply some of those challenges to the particular customer scenarios and where they match the technologies that Veeam and NetApp can deliver against. So you've got a number that you can see on the screen here. And if we take the first one, which is unstructured data, unstructured data is prevalent in most organizations, and they need a way to manage that unstructured data, which we can now deliver with our NAS backup for NAS, coupled with the NetApp storage infrastructure. You've then got, as Kevin has alluded to, that integration with snapshots, and that combination of snapshots, backup from snapshots and snapshot copies is really key. The third point is that we've got to be able to do that orchestration. We've got to be able to do the DR recovery, and give the customers absolute confidence that when they hit the green button, that when they need to deploy some recovery scenario, that it is going to happen as expected. And when we do the recovery, it's got to be a recovery at any scale, from bringing back the full stack, the full application onto another site, or bringing back the attachment in an email. So again, your customers have got to have confidence in that RPO and RTO being a matter of moments. And then the last point there is really how we address leveraging and tapping into that data through data labs. And you're going to hear a little bit more from Kevin on that later on. So this one is really just commenting on some of the challenges around backup solutions, and customers have identified a whole range of different impacts around backup solutions in 2020. And between NetApp and Veeam, we of course are able to address lots and lots of those that you can see on the screen, but critically, we're really aiming to address those top 5, 6, 7 that you can see there, where they need to look at the improved reliability of backups, knowing that they're coming back. We need to make sure that we maximize investment costs, investments into hardware, investments into storage, and that ROI and the total cost of ownership is as good as we can possibly make it. So these challenges, they echo what we're hearing from customers, and those are the things that we are addressing as our priorities through partners like yourselves. So what we're trying to do here is make sure that Veeam is giving you the best possible approach, the best possible outcome, and not rely on those legacy, those backup solutions that, as we've commented, can be complex and inflexible, and in some cases expensive. So what you can see here is really how Veeam and NetApp marry together to protect that data fabric. And the key thing that you can see here is that from a partner perspective, the opportunity that NetApp and Veeam gives you is to really expand the conversation with the customer, to expand the uptake of new technologies and open new avenues for different conversations in those customers. And also it gives you different ways to approach new accounts. If we're looking, for example, at net new logos, trying to address that whole point around legacy backup solutions not meeting future needs. So some of the questions to think about. It's important, there are many ways to open up a conversation with the customer, and they don't all start with trying to unearth a backup project. There are lots of different questions that we can look at here with a customer. So of course we want to understand what sort of solution they're using for backup today. Does it meet their needs? So we're trying to tease out and understand some of those pain points that we highlighted earlier on, so that we can move towards identifying some of those positive business outcomes that we're trying to drive. So there are lots and lots of questions that you can look at. You can see some of the perhaps more obvious ones to look at here. And as soon as you start to get, an element of a pain being addressed in any one of these points here, that between Veeam and NetApp, we've got a conversation that we can have with the customer to make that something that we address. When you find the opportunity, as I say, it's a resell opportunity for you that you can put on one set of paperwork, one bill of materials with NetApp, technology and storage, and you can do a deal registration. So you can deal register that particular opportunity. And what that really does is afford you, as that partner that discovered it, that's driving a level of confidence and protection that you'll get the support from NetApp, you'll get that support from Veeam to drive the opportunity and really try and maximize what you can do with that customer. So make sure that you understand moving forward how you do a deal registration through NetApp.
Thank you, Mark. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through some of the sales plays, and we're going to start with the rollout of the full service really here. So we're coming back to the 3-2-1 rule. So that's 3 copies of your data on 2 different media types and 1 in a different location, but of course with full integration with NetApp here. So what we have is the ability, we would want 3 copies of that data. Now the primary copy would be down at the bottom left there on the NetApp FAS or HCI. We would be able to take a snapshot down on there and orchestrate that snapshot. Perhaps it's over on a secondary HCI, but we can then get that first copy out to perhaps an E-series, or even a backup copy to an E-series. But then that would be considered that secondary copy out to that E-series, perhaps even using our cloud tier function out to a storage grid. If that storage grid is perhaps deployed in a hybrid model, so performing other tasks as well, you could maybe carve out some space for that secondary backup. Or if you wished to get that true third copy off-site very easily, that could be an off-site storage grid, of course, but perhaps out to one of the hyperscalers, out to AWS or perhaps Azure, or even an E-series in a different location. All possible when utilizing Veeam and NetApp technology together with that full orchestration and automation, making all these copies of this data very easy to create, but also very easy to access for recovery. So moving on to a number of use cases. Now we're going to focus on a smaller number of these, but I just wanted to make you aware that these are all possibilities. So we're going to be looking at modernizing backup and recovery. So that's the easy one. Veeam and E-series. Perhaps going into a net new customer that hasn't been a NetApp customer before, or perhaps even a Veeam customer before. That would really help you with a land and expand type approach. Perhaps scale to the cloud. So being able to easily externalize that data out to the cloud. Maybe they're already a NetApp customer wanting to get some data out to the cloud. Perfect opportunity to get Veeam involved with that NetApp storage layer, and we can take care of that. And of course, disaster recovery and business continuity with full orchestration and verification. That's where we can play as well. Workload consolidation, so the customer's considering a converged architecture. Well, Veeam and NetApp HCI is a perfect fit where similar values across a HCI deployment being very easy to deploy, very easy to manage. Veeam is exactly the same, very easy to deploy and manage, and works perfectly with NetApp HCI. The customer may have a large amount of unstructured data sat out on a NetApp filer. Well, of course, we can protect that now with version 10, with our seriously powerful NAS backup, which scales to petabytes of data and billions of files. Ransomware protection with some of our immutable capabilities as well. So ransomware, there's a number of tiers really with ransomware. Ideally, a customer needs to understand the risk and try and maybe mitigate a risk of being first infected. That could even include staff training perhaps. But then looking at recovering or detecting and then recovering from a ransomware outbreak, that's where Veeam can certainly help. And even with some of our safe recovery options using staged restore. And maybe data archive, so long-term retention, leveraging Veeam and StorageGrid. Cloud mobility, the ability to move data between locations is a great capability, and that's something we can do as well. And remote workers, again, Veeam can help there, perhaps getting data over to a particular E-series. But we're going to look at a couple of these in more detail. So we're going to be looking at Modernize, backup and recovery. We're going to be looking at workload consolidation, and we're going to be looking at unstructured data and cloud mobility. So if we dive straight into the Modernize, backup and recovery. So here you can see multiple locations, multiple NetApp filers, VMware on the primary location. We're able to orchestrate primary snapshots. We're then able to make them involved in a snap mirror, snap vault over to a secondary, and then we're able to take the data out of those snapshots. Again, all controlled centrally from within Veeam Backup and Replication. We'll then even be able to create a tertiary copy, so a 321 if you remember the rule. We can get that across to the NetApp E-series. But once we have those both backups on the E-series and snapshots on the two primary and secondary arrays, we have the ability to perform granular recoveries from either snapshots or backups. It's just as easy to use a snapshot or a backup. But we also have Veeam Data Labs, the ability to spin up dev, test, troubleshooting environments for things like compliance and security testing from, again, a backup or a snapshot. And it's great to be able to blend the two together. Moving on to workload consolidation. So if the customer has gone through a workload consolidation program and they're running all their workloads on NetApp HCI, the same applies. We can get that data using the integrated, the storage snapshots down on the HCI across to an E-series, or we can access the snapshots already on the HCI and again perform granular restores from maybe a full VM restore, could be an Exchange restore, a SQL restore, an Oracle restore, Active Directory restore, again from a snapshot or a backup. Then we come on to NAS. So the challenges of NAS backup, it does need to be able to scale to petabytes of data, and it's important to understand how we scale as well. There has to be an ultra-fast incremental file backup, so no need to warp the file system. So I'll take a look at that in a second. And you need to be able to provide data consistency and make the storage locations particularly cost-effective. So how does it work with Veeam? Well, it's very flexible, of course. We can protect SMB shares, NFS, can even protect Windows file shares or Linux file shares. And we have inbuilt change file tracking. We actually create fingerprints of the attributes of folders. So again, there's no need to warp the file system. We can very quickly identify the files that have changed, target those, and get those across into the backup. It's snapshot friendly, of course, supporting the snapshots down on the NetApp filers. So no file locks taken into account with leveraging the snapshots, full point-in-time recovery, and offloading that snapshot technology to that very performant underlying storage. Lots of recovery options, entire file share, point-in-time recovery, and of course, file level recovery. There are a number of options. We can back up directly from a file share, from a VSS snapshot, but the most performant would be backup from a native storage snapshot. And why would you do that? Well, it's going to take care of open files that you would not be able to back up without that VSS or native storage snapshot. So just taking a look at that full picture of that unstructured data, you can see on the left-hand side you have your NetApp filer. We have our file proxy and a cache repository where we keep metadata. We can get that data very quickly across into a NetApp E-series. Potentially a secondary copy out to a secondary NetApp E-series, or even an archive copy out to a storage grid or one of the hyperscalers. again, mentioning the recovery options, we can roll back a file share to a point in time. We can recover the entire file share to its original or a different location. And with specific files and folders, we've got file versioning and also original files restoration capabilities. So cloud mobility. So the ability, once you've created a Veeam backup, regardless of whether it was an agent, whether it was a cloud workload, whether it was a virtual machine, and you've got that across to a NetApp E-Series, we can perform direct recoveries direct to Azure, direct to AWS in 2 clicks. Really delivers a very flexible and mobile feature set around perhaps you want to recover a number of machines into Azure for bursting. You wanted to maybe spin up a dev project based on some production workloads. You can very quickly recover those into Azure. And we have a licensing model that supports that mobility. So we have the Veeam Universal licensing, and the sense that the really the idea around this licensing is you license the object. So whether it be a VM on VMware, on Hyper-V, a cloud workload, a portion of NAS, it's just one Veeam Universal licensing, and that moves with the particular data set or workload. Drives a very flexible and portable licensing model. No need to burn a license because you're no longer using that type of protection. The license moves along with it. So on top of that data protection and data availability, we have a product called Veeam One. And that's part of our Veeam Availability Suite. It really delivers intelligent diagnostics, automatic monitoring, AI-driven remediation for issues, monitoring analytics, and report on any data that's collected. Lots of built-in reports, and of course, it gives you the ability to see and understand the governance and compliance and data location within your environment. And that's really key when bringing multiple technologies together, when you're bringing Veeam and NetApp together, to really have a good understanding of your data location so that you can really deliver true value from that. So I think we're sort of coming towards the end of the session here today, and I really just wanted to summarize some of the features that we have and the sort of the ethos that we have. And Veeam is really the #1 choice for cloud data management. All our features and functionality and orchestration across Veeam and NetApp are kept very simple, very easy to use, truly flexible, so with that portability of licensing and data movement, and of course reliable. All the features that we have, and I think as Mark mentioned earlier, you would want them to work in the event of a disaster and really help you recover from any type of failure or issue.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you, Kevin. So I hope this has been a useful session for everybody joining today. Certainly the combination of NetApp and Veeam is very, very powerful, and we're confident in our joint ability to address most, if not all, of the customer demands and the challenges that you're seeing when you talk to customers. You know, you've heard a little bit about the direction that customers are going in, the challenges that they face, and of course they're looking for that flexibility, as Kevin has highlighted. So there is a whole raft of individuals at Arrow, at NetApp, and at Veeam that would be more than happy to support you as you unearth and discover and grow these opportunities for customer conversations. So please do reach out to your Arrow team, and good luck. Thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah, thanks very much for joining today, and reach out if you need anything. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.